And this afternoon, I have the pleasure of speaking with Taps Trades, a fellow YouTuber that focuses on some different areas in the NFT space than we typically focus on. So Taps, very nice to meet you, man. Happy to have you here.
Nice to meet you too, Pio. I appreciate having me on the channel. Big fan of NFT culture and looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, we're happy to have you here too. So I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. Want to talk a little bit about your YouTube channel and the space within the like NFTs that you kind of focus on the most?
Yeah, so I started my channel, I guess, 5, 6 months ago, and it's covering all kinds of crypto projects, but it's primarily has been focused around Ecome and VeVe. So I found Ecome and VeVe back in February, and signed on. There was still, plenty of collectibles in the marketplace, and got all into it. And the channel just kind of picked up from there and found a community that I didn't know existed at the time. And since then, I've been covering crypto and NFTs and VeVe, and it's been absolutely a blast. And love creating content.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, I think that VeVe is one area of the NFT space that doesn't get as much mainstream, so to speak, attention. Not that the NFT space is necessarily mainstream at all, but within the space, the big influencers, the people that are looking for profits, looking to trade, looking to speculate, I don't really hear VeVe talked about too much. In fact, I even put out a poll on Twitter, what is the most profitable area, or what is the most profitable platform in the NFT space. And the only reason I did this was to see if anybody voted for VeVe. I put OpenSea, Nifty Gateway, and VeVe. It was like something like 80% OpenSea, 20% Nifty Gateway, and 0 votes for VeVe. So it kind of confirmed my my hypothesis that VeVe is not necessarily well known in the space. What brought you to VeVe? What kind of attracted you, and what has kept you there?
Yeah, so what initially attracted to me was I actually saw Blockchain Andy, who I followed because I love Zilliqa, and he was talking about Ecome, the token, and VeVe, the actual app where you can collect the digital collectible NFTs. And it was just really cool, right? Like what I had seen in the NFT space, there was nothing of this premium quality of, like a DC character like Batman, or, see like Superman, or anything that was really like VeVe in the space. So it attracted me, even though I wasn't heavily into NFTs yet. And I think that's where they have a big edge too, is because you can actually hop on VeVe, and it's as simple as like setting up an Amazon account, right? Like your grandma can set up a VeVe account with not needing to link a MetaMask and all that. And I think what the big miss is, and why it's so slept on, is because technically they're not quite yet NFTs, right? It's in this gated environment on that VeVe app, but they're going to be moving from GoChain to Immutable X in the next coming weeks. And then that's going to actually make them be able to go on an OpenSea marketplace and really have that NFT tag to it, right? So I think that's why a lot of people haven't really jumped into it, but there's a lot of money to really be made in, I got a Batman from the season 1 that I think I spent $89 or $69, something like that. And you can now sell it for over 3 or 4 grand. There's Superman, where you got it for $50, and they're now running around like $500. So there's definitely a lot of money to be made, especially if it's an ultra rare or a season 1, and people are flipping them professionally. So I think because it doesn't quite yet have that connotation to the NFT space as much as some other projects, just people aren't aware of it yet.
That's so interesting you say that. And so obviously, you cover this space, like trading VeVe collectibles. We had another YouTuber on, VeVe Flipper. He talked all about it. This is the Comic Way came on with him. This guy Dozer, who also talks about it. Shout out to
Awesome
those
guys.
guys. It was, yeah, great stream. We're going to do more work with them, and obviously hope to do more work with you. When you look at VeVe, what kind of strategy gets employed? Let's say I'm coming to VeVe. I'm not interested in holding, these toys, or these digital collectibles, I should say, for long term, but I am looking to speculate, short term speculation. I'm looking to trade and turn relatively quick profits. What's the strategy for that?
So if you're looking for like basically there's a lot of different mentalities, right? There's a collector mentality, there's a flipper mentality, and then there's the people who actually see them as long-term holds. Kind of like if you were to buy a CryptoPunk, way back in the day, the people who held versus flipping are in a much better light right now. But
Right.
if you're looking to basically flip as fast as possible, and definitely the comic way and VeVe Flip, they're absolutely very much more in tune with how the collectibles trade. But usually the easiest way is you go for the ultra rares right off the bat, and the ones that have a lot of uniqueness and low mints to them. So those are typically going to be the ones that you have a big turnaround right off the bat. Like we just had the CE tag, so basically the comic or the Comic-Con event exclusive tags that happened this past weekend. And there was this one called Lucky, which was a gold rabbit. It's psycho. It's awesome, but it came from
Yep.
Jermaine Rogers, well-known artist who's been around for 20 years. And that collectible right now is going for $2,000, but there was only like 900 mints. So it was a race. I wasn't able to secure one. So what you want to do for the quickest profit is try to grab an ultra rare or a couple if you can right off the drop, and then watch the marketplace and usually flip it around that time. But what's crazy is there's an entire community behind it, right? So there's over 100,000 people on Twitter. There's over, at this point, probably around 400, if not more than 400,000 users. There's Reddit, there's Discord, there's tons of Ecome fam. And so they're all talking and kind of what makes this collectible bigger than this collectible, right? And so the narrative is constantly changing. So what could be $500 today could be $1,000, a month later or a couple weeks later as that narrative changes among the community.
Right. It's incredibly difficult to predict the performance of any of these assets. It's such a brand new space. And, besides that, the collectibles sort of marketplace, the collectibles market in general, for humans has always been illiquid compared to like the stock market or something like that. Even, now cryptocurrency markets. And, at the end of the day, it's just so hard to speculate on what will do well. I think that's what attracts people to flipping in these spaces because narratives, get spun and a piece can shoot up in value within moments and then come crashing down just as quick. So from gathering, I've never bought anything on VeVe. I'm very interested in starting to. My understanding is you get on, you buy gems, right? The currency on VeVe, exchange fiat money for gems. At this point, you can't take profits out yet. Is that correct?
Correct. So that's the MTL, which is actually going to be coming in the next, hopefully again, week or two. We've been waiting a while for that. So people have been stacking up gems, or they'll flip and then buy more collectibles. So that is coming in the next couple of weeks. And you mentioned kind of like liquidity in stocks. How I look at VeVe is it's almost like getting into a private company, right? Like in a Series A or B company before they go public, right? Before the masses can get a hold of it, because you're able to collect what are going to be NFTs before they're NFTs. And they have tons more utility than what you see, and even quality than what you see on a lot of 90% of what's out there in the marketplace. So that's kind of how I view them in their current state.
Sure. Okay. Very good analogy. And what is the barrier to me getting an ultra rare every single time and then flipping it for some kind of profit, even if that profit is just like a 20% or a 15% profit? Is it literally just me not being quick enough with my thumb on the phone as the drop happens?
Yeah. I mean, so what happens is that everyone's all like they have their phones. It's drops are absolutely crazy. They usually happen every Thursday. And there's usually a common, an uncommon, a rare, and an ultra rare, depending on what the set is. But everyone's usually going for that ultra rare, right? Because they know it's going to turn the biggest profit. And then when it goes live in the marketplace, it's already going to typically be about 5x what its current price is, and then continues to climb depending on the set. So literally there's a countdown. And when that thing hits zero, everyone is mashing their phones. There's all kinds of like little hacks and strategies, but it is literally, well over 100,000 to a couple 100,000 people who are all trying for that one drop, and there might be only 900 or 1,200 or 1,600 mints. So a lot of people lose out, but it is still fun. And if you really want to complete that set and go for what is going to be something called the Master Collector Program, which is coming up. We don't know when, because VeVe is very careful about giving us dates. But the more sets you complete, there's going to be little bonuses to having a Master Collector program, and different tiers and different experience points that get you there, that allow you maybe to get in a little bit quicker on some of these drops, or maybe gives you access to different things, because we do know that some of them are actually becoming animated as well. We never know which ones are going to become animated, but they are actually animating them retroactively, which we saw with the Ritmo collectible from Tokidoki.
Very interesting stuff. The fact that it's very much so still being built out. There's a number of incredibly important features that aren't available yet, but presumably will be soon. And yet the following is just, oh my goodness, so passionate, like the following that you've built in such a short period of time is very, very impressive. I think it definitely reflects on how hot this space is. We had Tom Bilyeu on earlier this week. I saw him yesterday putting a ton of tweets out about VeVe. And I think that VeVe's going to attract a lot of people, because people already collect these toys, these collectibles physically, and whoever owns the licenses is going to have access to those collectors. So are there other platforms besides VeVe that have some of these really desirable licenses, like the Batman or DC Comics, any of these brand name, big franchise licenses besides VeVe out there?
Oh yeah, of course. And what's different about, I guess, like the licensing and the different NFT platforms is, I mean, not different, but anyone can work with a licensor, right? So Marvel has worked with a couple other companies like Quid, which is under Animoca Brands, and there are other digital collecting projects out there like TVK, Terra Virtual Collect. But what separates VeVe, I guess, from them is they were selected by Marvel as a partner, not just to use Marvel content. And when you look at these collectibles, again, the premium quality of them is so different from anything else that's out there that they stand out. You can actually zoom in. You have that picture of Ultraman up there. You can actually zoom in. Well, I think you have to have the actual collectible, but you can see the nuts and bolts and inner workings, and it's absolutely incredible. And then when you have the app, you can actually project it into augmented reality. So you see tons of people taking pictures with their kids and getting creative artwork with it. But to answer your question, yes, other projects can work with some of these licensors, and they are, but the leadership that is in charge of VeVe and Ecome, which are David Yu, who's been in the business for well over 20 years, and the head of licensing is Al Khan, who is the man who was responsible for bringing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Cabbage Patch Kids all to the US and bringing it to light. So, I mean, the team is stacked in terms of credentials and working within this industry for decades. So if they want a license, they get it. And we all know that they're sitting on some pretty big licenses that they just can't announce yet. Like you've probably heard us all say when Pokemon and plenty of things like that. But sure, it's just a matter of time until we see more. But that's really what I guess differentiates them from some of the other companies that can use Marvel or whatever licensor.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm sold, right? You sold me. I'm gonna start paying much closer attention to VeVe. So just for an example, right? Someone that's never bought VeVe before, myself, I've never bought anything. Earlier today, there was a drop, right?
Not today. So they actually did skip the drop today. They do that occasionally because there's a lot coming, right? They're working on the mutable thing. They're working on the cash out of gems thing. So we don't know, I guess, what the next drop will be, but it will most likely be next Thursday.
Okay. So next Thursday, I'm interested in getting involved. I'm going to put $250 of fiat into the VeVe system. I'm going to get the equivalent of gems to spend on the VeVe collectibles. I'm going to take a look at the drop. If I want to turn a profit, I'm going to target that ultra rare.
Well, you can target more than the ultra rare, but I would definitely say your best bet is to target ultra rares and rares for flipping. Yeah, and if you are going to open up a VeVe account and get it all set up, let me know. I'll send you like one of my Myrmicornos or something. I'll get you started.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. And so let's say I want to be a little bit more conservative. My guess is that a rare will still turn a profit, maybe not as much profit as an ultra rare, but if so many people are targeting the ultra rare, maybe I'll target the rare. Is that a sound strategy to be a little bit more conservative but still target profit?
So yes and no. I'd say by majority, yeah. But give example the Givenchy drop, which was
Yeah.
a big. It was kind of our first peek into I guess artist alley vertical, which they're working more with artists and bigger brands. But it was for the LGBTQ thing that Givenchy did, and there was a rare that was animated. It changes picture, and it's just really really cool. And then there was two ultra rares that are actually not performing as high in terms of the resale value as that rare because Givenchy, the actual brand, really only showed that piece, whereas the other ones were collaborated with VeVe. So that collectible, even though it's a rare, is performing higher than the ultra rare. And that Superman that I mentioned earlier, I believe is an uncommon. Don't quote me on that, but it's one collectible that makes a set. So usually in order to get a set, you need at least 3 or 4 different of these collectibles from that same drop. But Superman is one of one, which is one of the very few that are actually like that. So its value has increased, even though it isn't a rare or a ultra rare, and it's a first appearance. So there's a first appearance, first edition. So it's not always the ultra rares, but I'd say by majority, that's your best bet.
So how did the owner of that one of one Superman, how did that owner acquire the Superman?
So I have 2 Supermans, and I got them during the drop. I was just fast with the fingers on that, and so but there are people who missed the drop, and I think when the marketplace first opens, so they shut down the marketplace during the drop, and then usually 10 to 30 minutes later, the marketplace reopens, and you just see all of them coming on, right? So I think when the marketplace first opened, the Superman was listed somewhere around 200 gems. So that's already a 4x, but people then bought it, right? Because they want that 101. They're going for that master collector program in the future, or they just love Superman. And at the time, you're like, oh man, why would you spend 4x on it? But then they're up, if they were to sell it right now, they bought it for 200 and now they can sell it for 500 plus. So that's kind of, I guess, how like the drops work.
Yeah, and that's in line with the rest of the NFT market, right? Is like
Right.
when it just keeps on going up, it's just hard to tell if it's going to come back down. It's obviously an extremely speculative and new market that's very, very challenging to be able to, just attack appropriately. With this master collector program that you've alluded to a couple of times, can you talk about what sort of context has been given already, like what we do know and what we don't know?
It's shadowed in a veil that Ecome and VeVe are really good about doing, right? Like they're hands down one of like the most communicative projects with their community I've ever experienced. But they always give us like pieces of, hey, this is coming, but we're not going to tell you exactly when until it's up to it, so that way they're not missing, like a deadline, and they want to make sure they perfect it. But the Master Collector program, from what we've gathered so far, is going to give you some added benefits. And we don't know how much you need to have, whether it's complete sets or total collectibles, but it will allow you to also at some point stake your OMI, which is the crypto that's associated with the VeVe app. But it will give you added benefits. And they also say, there's an entire metaverse that's coming later this year too, which is called the VeVeverse. And we don't know if that'll have some tie to the Master Collector program either, but they have said, maybe if you have collected a ton of different Batmans, like you could create a Batman-centric, land-based room, or however it's going to be rolled out in the VeVeverse. But having completed sets will come with a lot of advantages once that is rolled out.
I think that makes sense. Rewarding collectors that hold and that acquire entire collections. That's
Mm.
awesome. So, keep in mind, I'm a total noob. What is Ecome and how is that different than VeVe?
Yeah, so Ecome or OMI, OMI, is the token that's associated with the app. So like the app drives it all, right? So there would be no, I guess, utility to Ecome or OMI if there wasn't the app. And basically, when you are buying gems with your credit card or fiat in the store, you can then use them to buy the collectibles, right? When you spend those gems in the store, OMI, the crypto, is being burnt. And they started with a massive supply because they knew how big this was going to be and how fast it was going to grow. So they need to make sure they have enough, right? And there have been billions of OMI burnt from people buying gems, or sorry, burning gems as they buy the collectibles. And then there's also a smaller percentage that is burned within the marketplace from peer-to-peers who are buying and trading and selling there as well.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole thing, huh? And one thing that I know about VeVe is that the mint counts are considerably higher than what we see in other NFT projects. What can you say about that? About the number of mints that are associated with each drop, and how that might affect secondary market price action. What can you say about that?
So it absolutely affects everything. And that was something that, I've been a collector by nature. I have a lot of different collectibles and cards and everything over the years, but I wish I understood how important the low mints were earlier, because you could list, let's say, a Batman for, let's say $300 or 300 gems, right? And it could be a mint 1,000 of, maybe there was 3,000 that were dropped and they've been sold out. That would go for probably more in the marketplace than a 2,000 mint. But if there's something that's sub 500 or sub 100, they're typically going to be higher in value. Especially anything that's sub 100 is going to be really high value. There's a ton of VeVe whales who literally all they do is try to collect the same number. So if they want to get a set of, let's say Superman, well, he's one of one, let's say Batman again, then they would try and get number 77 of all four of that drop. And then what they're trying to do is stack up all of the 77s of a set, or at least low mints. So that way, when we do make that move to immutable, they can back sell, right? So if you want to have all of the lowest mints of this entire set, the value is going to be that much higher. And then there's also mints that have more kind of value to them based on the year, right? So there was a Back to the Future drop where we all got the DeLoreans. And so if the year matches the year that Back to the Future came out, that's most likely going to sell a lot higher. Same thing with Ghostbusters drops that we've seen, and so on and so forth. So there's definitely a lot to pay attention to with how these trade in value, specifically on the mint numbers.
Yeah, it seems like it. And, you alluded to earlier the idea that people are making full-time livings by flipping on VeVe. And obviously there's channels dedicated to that. VeVe Flipper, we mentioned him before. When do you have specific examples? Like, are there well-known whales or well-known traders that have done incredibly well? Could you give any anecdotes there to someone like myself that doesn't know that information? I'd love to hear about someone putting $100 into the platform and walking away with $100,000 or something ridiculous like that. If stories like that exist.
So I've seen plenty of people tweet about how they flipped their way up, and people are doing it professionally. I wouldn't say anyone's making a full-time living doing it, because again, you can't cash out, right? But that will be something that's very possible to do, because again, there is so much demand and so much value in these, and people are flipping them professionally. I've seen a lot of stories where someone started with a few collectibles, and then they flipped their way up, kept accumulating, and now they're sitting on tons of collectibles, right? But there are a couple different people, or like the VeVe whales in the space. Like there's one named Ray Fixie. He has tons of collectibles, and basically his goal is to accumulate a ton of a set collectible. He actually did this, I think, with the Superman, and so that way he is controlling a lot of that market, right? So if someone, actually, there's one called Donnie, which is this little horse from Powerpuff Girls. There was, I think, 150 mints, and there's one collector who has roughly like a fourth of the Donnies, and that one collectible, I don't know how much it sold for when it dropped, probably somewhere between $50 or $100. Like, they're actually pretty affordable. But I think the cheapest one you can get now is roughly 36 grand. And so people will kind of work to raise the floor on these things as they control how much is available and how much you can actually sell. So when it comes to being able to flip your way up and actually make this a real-time gig, it's very possible, especially as our user count continues to grow because they're targeting 1 million users by the end of the year. So as it grows and as the metaverse, the VeVeverse comes into fruition, and we're able to actually do all this in a augmented reality, or sorry, virtual reality setting, there will be shops in all kinds of ways that people are actually making money with VeVe itself.
Very exciting times. And, it sounds like no different than any other, sector of the NFT space. The whales are going to whale, and that's just what's going to happen. They're going to try to accumulate as much of a particular project as they can to control the supply and name their own price if they do want to sell it. So that's, a very familiar sort of scenario. Do you think that once VeVe gives the compatibility, or just the ability, I should say, to withdraw fiat, like so that people can actually finally take the money out of VeVe, what sort of impact to the secondary market do you think that could have? I'm just thinking like that could have some kind of impact. I'd be curious to know what your speculation is that it would have.
Yeah, and so I mean, with every marketplace, there's ebbs and flows, right? So there's a lot of speculation out there that once the ability to cash out, that it will drop the market. And I actually do agree that will create a sell-off because people will be trying to get that cash out and maybe put it into other projects or to even buy more OMI. I know quite a few people who their goal is to do exactly that and put it in while it's down, but that's also an opportunity, right? So as that price drops on some of those collectibles, that's typically when I've been buying all these collectibles. Like we just had the big Comic-Con announcement that happened, and a lot of people were selling a lot of what they had too many of, just to try and get more gems to be ready for these comic or these con exclusive tagged collectibles because they're going to hold a lot of value later. So that did drop some of the prices in the market. So while they were all selling, I was usually scooping up some of these at discounted prices. So we'll probably see a discount in the market again coming up here when you do have that cash out, because people will just, trying to grab that cash. And that's a buying opportunity in my eyes.
And one last question before I let you go. When you're looking at these different projects, what are the factors that make you bullish on a project? Like when you're looking at a new VeVe drop, maybe it's not even a franchise that you've heard of before, so you don't know these characters. How do you approach it, and what will determine whether you're bullish on it or not?
Great question. So when it comes to the drops, kind of think about who they're appealing to, right? Because a lot of this has been mostly to collectors and DC fans and basically anyone who had that collector mentality. But they announced digital comic books are going to be coming, so they're going to be tackling the comic, the comic user base. And then they have these LOL dolls, like I guess the company that owns MGA is the company that owns the Bratz dolls, which actually outsell Barbie. And so they're going to be targeting, a younger audience as well. And so what gets me, I guess, kind of more bullish on some collectibles than others is when I think what's really going to drive this price up. And what we've seen mostly, it's been mainly the actual artist ones have been some of the highest performing. So they're tied to an artist who we're going to see probably more drops from them. But those have been kind of what I've been latching on to the most. But it all depends because they're doing more and more things that are going to appeal to more users, right? So they have like an anime vertical that's going to be coming out, and they have a brand with NFLPA, so you'd be able to see NFL players that are actually in your showroom. So as they continue to branch out in more verticals and targeting more users, as those new users come in, the demand will change on what's kind of that hot collectible. So it's really incredible how it's evolving just from a couple of months in, and it's going to be that much more so because what separates them from a lot of different NFT projects is they're targeting mass adoption, right? You don't have to care about crypto to get a VeVe collectible, but you will be able to mint them on OpenSea and still drive value that way coming soon. So I think what's valuable today may not be valuable tomorrow as the user base changes.
Well, that's a lot to process. So everybody, this is never financial advice, and invest or buy VeVe collectibles at your own risk. It sounds like there's a lot of changes coming, and that is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. You've definitely VeVe pilled me. I'm going to get involved, and I'm going to
The
probably be
Kool-Aid is
knocking on your
delicious.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to be knocking on your door for tips, I'm sure. And I hope that we can make more content together. Everybody, make sure you follow Taps at Taps Trades. Let me make sure that's on screen here. Very active on Twitter and YouTube. And Taps, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Likewise. My pleasure. Thanks for watching, everyone.